Good afternoon, everyone. If you're watching this, you're watching another one of our extraordinary meetings during this COVID era. You can watch it on community access television, should you be so inclined, or you can join in with us now on Zoom. If you're already there, you know that, so that was unnecessary. We're going to start, as we typically do on these off days, with a COVID report from our town officials, starting with our Board of Health agent, Bob Valerie. Bob?
I just got the DPH numbers down. Every Thursday, they send me a 2-week run rate. Of tests, which was 848 tests performed with 69 positive cases. So that would put us at the 2-week run rate of 8.13. I look at those numbers, I get the entire state. So I took all of our surrounding towns. We are running a lower rate, slightly lower rate than every town that surrounds us. And then just towns that have the same basic population or basic test rate. And we seem to be running a little bit below them too. So it's good to see having come out of the holidays because we had really spiked there. The governor also today will be announcing that effective January 25th at 5 a.m., the stay-at-home advisory for hours of 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. is rescinded. So, in a nutshell, where the restaurants had to close at 10 o'clock, and the liquor stores had to close at 10, now they'll be able to, as of Monday, be able to go back to their regular hours. The 25% temporary capacity and gathering limits remain in place until Monday, February 8th. So we still have the same limitation on numbers of people, but now they can stay out a little later. And Chief and I are still working on the potentials of having a town vaccination site. Still a progress or a process in works, because there's a lot of steps to it. The first and foremost is safety, both for the patient and the providers, making sure that it's all ADA accessible. Then the vaccines, will we have it, and then how we store it, how we transport it. The actual workup of our site plans, which is what we spent quite a bit of time on. Probably the best way would be trying to figure out a way to sign up by appointment, because we just can't have masses of people there. Coordinating the whole sign-in procedure, which is what we're going to try to get some volunteers for, so that we don't take the people we need doing essential functions into what might be a little bit less of an essential clerical type of function. The actual vaccination process, the monitoring of that vaccination, setting up the second shots, and then after you do use the site, we have to get it cleaned and sanitized. So those are just part of the functions that are in our 8-page checklist of how to set up a site correctly. But we are,
get
yes.
closer to the mic, please.
Okay.
Bring the mic to you.
Okay, can you hear me now? So what we'll be doing, is trying to get our own vaccination site, but that would be, again, still working in coordination with Walmart, which plans on having their own vaccination facilities, Stop and Shop having their own vaccination facilities, and primary care. So,
Are there any projections on availability? I mean, even with all these plans, is there going to be vaccine available?
well, that's like the super question. No, we don't have an answer to that at all. So, the best laid plans can be put in place, but if you don't have the horse in front of the cart, which is actually the vaccines, then...
Well, that's what I was kind of getting.
So right now, they're only allowing us to order for phase 1, which was the first responders. All of our first responders have been vaccinated. It didn't allow, it's like a drop-down menu when you go to, when you put in your order for the vaccine. So it didn't allow us to go past that. So even though we're, like Bob said, we're working on the plan to do it, our next opportunity to place an order will be Monday. We're going to get a form sent to us on Monday, and hopefully it allows us to place that order for the phase 2 vaccine starting on Monday. As far as availability, we really, like Bob said, we don't know for sure what's going to be available to us. The only thing we've been guaranteed is that we'll get the second doses for everyone that's already been vaccinated. That we know. We just don't know what else is going to be available and when, the timeline for it.
Right. And we still do have to get, we don't have many in our town left to vaccinate in phase 1.
No.
But some of the other bigger towns are still not even out of, their phase 1 process. So phase 2, until such date that they tell us, okay, yep, we have vaccines for you, yes, here's a go live date. And that, that could change.
Right, so we're looking at people, couple things that Our Lady of the Lake Church was gracious to offer us their hall. Bob and I were up there yesterday with Alan Diaz, and we went over how we would set a vaccination clinic up using that, and I think it'll be a decent space for us. We'll have, a good flow path for people. I talked to the chief earlier about having law enforcement up just for helping with traffic control, things like that. Looking at the 75-plus population, Charlie did some numbers, and I know Alan had put together some numbers after talking to the park. And Charlie was based on the 2010 census, but it's probably fairly accurate. There's probably 500 people in that group of over 75s. And then also in phase 2, we'll have the over 65s and people with the comorbidities and the school teachers. So, our first order would probably include enough to do the over 75 population plus the school teachers. And then, we place orders every week after that.
Each phase has your priority rankings. So, yes, 65 and older is on phase 2, but they're at the bottom of phase 2.
Right.
So just when people are reading it, if they happen to be hopefully on the mass.gov website or the CDC website, when you're reading through it, it shows you, okay, well, after these ones get done, then I follow the next group.
Just wondering if we could try to coordinate with Plimpton and Kingston for the Silver Lake teachers so that we have a plan in place. This week we had a meeting for the chairs to discuss pool testing of the students at the school, and we kind of backed off that for right now because of just the pure administration factor of trying to put 10 students into the same group each time and do the testing, and it not really being completely funded yet by the state or federal government on which path was taken. But I didn't know where the school has used software in the past to pick times for appointments. I didn't know if that's something that we could try to see if we could use that same software.
So the state supplied us with the software.
Oh, they
so
did,
there's something
yes.
called Prep Mod.
Okay.
We're all set up in that now. And what happens is, say when we go to the 75, or say school teachers, we're going to do school teachers, say in 2 weeks, we can give them a link, and then they'll be able to go on and set up their time, and it'll automatically give them their follow-up appointment right from that link. Depending, the other portion of that is that we can bill insurance for administration, and when they sign up in Prep Mod, they'll be putting all that data in, which gets forwarded right to UMass, does all the billing for cities and towns. So that prep mod will enable us to do that.
Oh, that's great.
I assume that we would be responsible for all the teachers that work in our,
Yeah, that was the initial plan, but I'll talk to Chief Silver and Chief Douglas. Those two departments didn't do vaccination clinics, so I don't know where, they don't work with Brockton Hospital, so they're part of the Beth Israel Plymouth group, which it doesn't really matter. But they were part of a group that was formed in Duxbury that used the Marshfield Medical Reserve Corps, it's called, to do all their vaccinations for their first responders. So they really didn't get into administering vaccinations at the fire department level. But I will touch base with them this week to see where they're at with that. I mean, we could put on, you know, get some help from them and host that portion up from Halifax too, seeing that we're already set up. I don't see that being a big issue, you know, a big issue. We did take care of the school, you know, school nurses, and we helped out with the Silver Lake nurses already. So I
Thank
don't
you.
see that being a problem.
Thank you for doing that.
No problem.
Anything else, Chief?
No, I don't have anything else.
No. Chief Shabs, anything?
Nothing on the,
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I had a question of Gordon.
Yes.
Did I understand correctly, and I don't know if somebody was making this up or not, did we have like a cluster over at Silver Lake?
So we had a cluster of sports teams.
Okay,
So there were 8 positive cases, I believe, and they shut down contact sports, meaning ice hockey and basketball, for 2 weeks.
I was hearing like crazy numbers, like 45 people or something. I don't know where that originated from. That's why I wanted to ask.
And maybe they checked 45 people out of the 45, 8 were positive.
Yeah, I didn't hear that at all.
No, I didn't hear that number. I thought it was 12 or 14.
close contact number.
Well,
Maybe that's what it was.
Because that would take the whole sports team out. if
Well,
they
that's
had
why I
plus.
was concerned. I'm going, if that number's even close to being accurate, that's a huge number.
One of the concerns at the school was really the staffing. If there were enough staff that ended up either being close contact or having it, that they would have to go to remote or some other thing
Right.
for the 2 weeks. But so far, that hasn't happened at either Silver Lake or the elementary school.
Okay, oh, well, that's good. That's good. Makes me feel better. All right, moving on. Charlie?
So Bob and I led a discussion back on Thursday with employees and such about the COVID protocols and such. And Bob can chime in. The sense we got was we were being too confusing in terms of the permutations of whether you should be coming to work, whether you shouldn't be, what's close contact, what's not, that type of thing, how long you should be out, when you can come back. And I think the idea Bob and I looked at was basically trying to simplify it and be on a conservative basis, or cautious, I guess is the best word for it, in that if you are a positive, if you are a close contact, you're out for the 14 days. That's calendar days, that's not work days. And then you'll come back either at the end of 14 days, if you don't have symptoms, great, you're back in. If you do have symptoms, but you test negative, fine, you can come back. But we're trying to simplify it for folks so that, because I think some of the feedback Bob and I got were, well, this person had it, you know, this person went through these steps, and this person went through these steps, and it's not right that person A gets to do it this way and person B gets to do it that way. We just simplified that. And we'll get that information out. I provided you sort of a synopsis of that. In connection with working from home, we did, you know, this isn't necessarily Bob's bailiwick, but this was more how we'll continue to handle the work from home situation. Obviously, they've got a positive test, or they've got another reason for quarantine. Quarantine is short-term, pre-existing condition would be a different standard. You know, they can work from home, document, but they'll have to document that pre-existing condition. If they have split shifts, for instance, we've allowed departments to do, you know, someone can come in Monday, Wednesday, somebody else can come Tuesday, Thursday. That's doable. And if for some reason we ever closed a building by the authority of that building, you know, in this case, this town hall would be the Board of Selectmen, that'd be another reason that people could work from home. If they're working from home, they need to punch in every day with the department head or the designee. They need to punch out. They need to provide a summary of the work done each day. And we're not talking some 3-page essay. Give me, you know, a paragraph, a couple of lines, just to document what you're doing that day. to the department head, and then the time cards need to show the hours of remote work, so it specifically says work remotely from, 8 to 2 or 8 to 4, or whatever it is. In terms of supplies and other items, we need to be supplying things like pens and paper clips and notepads, but then they have to return them once they're no longer working from home. There's no reason that a department will need more than their normal amount. It's not as if they're going to use more paper clips by working from home. So we're not going to fund work from home supplies any more than what's already in the department budget for supplies. If the additional equipment is needed, we've provided, for instance, the laptops and such. If it needs to be beyond that, I think it's something that needs to be approved by the board of selectmen in advance, so that if someone says, well, I need a printer, for instance. Well, except you're working from home, who are you printing it out to? And if you're working from home, you are able to connect to the printer network here in the building or in another building. So if there's any extraordinary equipment expenses needed, I want it bundled through the board. The board, department head can come to the board, say, so-and-so needs this piece of equipment, and then the board can approve it, so that we don't get in a situation where, who authorized this, why did they need it? At least it goes through the board. You're not just signing a bill after the fact. You're approving the bill before even the order goes through. Another issue is on internet access. It's a weird situation. Obviously, not everybody has internet access. And if we're asking people to work from home, or we're dividing people into, well, you have internet so you can go home, but you don't have internet so you don't get to go home, we're going to run into problems of not treating people equitably. But I think it falls back to exactly the same thing when we talked about equipment. If a department is going to say that Joe or Mary needs internet access, does not have that at home, they need a hotspot or something like that, then it comes back to the board of selectmen. So there's documentation, because we're going to look at various lengths of time. I mean, someone's out for quarantine for 14 days, I'm not quite, by the time we order a phone and get it and everything, that's going to be done. But if someone's out for a pre-existing condition, or we go into the rotating shifts, then that might be something that a department might come to board, but it needs to come through the board. We can't simply be writing checks for these additional expenses without some acknowledgement at the beginning that we're doing so. It's not an emergency situation. We've known about these possibilities during these months. We had situations obviously much earlier back in 20, but we may be, we may be headed, maybe not, towards having to do that again, depending on individual situations like quarantine, or long-term, like doing the shift changes or shift rotations. So that, I talked to Linda Cole, I talked to Sandy Nolan to get some input from them, what they need in terms of documentation and such. So that's where we are on that. Let's see if there were other issues that had come up. We talked about that. Obviously, we're not planning right now any large-scale testing program. I think the emphasis now, given the number of places that people can get tested, is trying to roll up the vaccination, or roll out the vaccination program versus testing program. I know that chiefs are going to work, I hope, with the Council on Aging.
Yeah,
because we are going to have, again, we were talking about people signing up, for instance. Well, back to the internet access. Not everybody has internet, especially if you're elderly. Well, how are you going to get signed up? So we have to both get the word out to everybody when and if we get a vaccination program running, and then get them a way of, in fact, being able to sign up, and even possibly transportation. In the sense of if they don't have a car or something, they're not able themselves to get to the vaccination site to work, for instance, with the Council on Aging, and see what we can do to make sure that everybody who wants to participate is going to have a way of signing up and participating. Especially our more, these folks are our most vulnerable individuals, the elderly especially. And so we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to participate. Federal COVID leave obviously ended back at the end of last month. I believe that President Biden may be proposing an extension of that. I don't know if it's going to be retroactive from December 30th, and obviously, who knows what Congress will do or when Congress will do it. Other communities have extended themselves. We haven't made that available. Obviously, people can take leave that's available to them, whether it's vacation or sick leave. But we don't have federal COVID leave operating at this point. I think that covers the other COVID issues that had come up.
I had just one question. Gentlemen, the most common test we're doing now is the antigen test, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, if you were to get a negative result, that's not necessarily 100% accurate, is that correct? If I get this right?
It's 85, they're roughly 85% accurate.
And typically,
Positive results, if we test someone there and we get a positive test, then it's just considered positive. If someone's symptomatic and has a negative test, they still need to get the PCR test.
okay, if they're symptomatic.
Yeah.
If they're not symptomatic, not necessarily.
Right, if they're not
doesn't
symptomatic,
necessarily-
it's more of a
So-
screening tool, knowing that there is a slight potential that we could get a false negative.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to clear that up. I was asked, and I thought I had it right, and I did, and I just wanted to make sure I got it accurate. That was it, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Is everybody ready to go to non-COVID?
Yep.
Green Earth Cannabis, I'm still working on the HCA for that. Curtin Brothers, you're going to be seeing them come in for a public hearing on Tuesday for their above-ground storage fuel tanks. Aldana Road and the transfer of parcels. I had been, again, let me backtrack. A couple of weeks ago, the state legislature did finally pass the necessary legislation to approve the transfer of the sliver from the town to, from the Commonwealth to the town. So, and it was signed as Chapter 303 of the Acts of 2020. Part of that whole transaction is obviously we're selling the land, the other parcels to the state. And Pam went back through because Joan Pierce had asked me about whether there was an official vote by the board to approve the sale of parcel A to the state for 150. We've talked about it any number of times.
But we did not
But
vote.
there doesn't look like there was an actual vote.
No, we didn't, we hesitated, because we didn't know how it was going to play out.
Right. So if the board would want to, it could today vote to approve a motion to sell that parcel for 150 to the Commonwealth. And then we'll get that signed off, recorded and then signed off by the town clerk and get that up to Joan Pierce and the CAM.
It would appear that all the conditions that we set out have been met. I don't have a problem with it, and I've been,
No, do
and Troy and I have been through this thing for about 20 years, so it'd be nice to get it off our plate. So if I would love to entertain a motion to sign the deed.
So this,
So moved.
I'll second, but I just wanted to ask, so this is to get the sliver of land on Aldana for our piece, the town's
Well,
piece?
there's
the
separate
state already gave us
transactions. We're not going to sign, you're not going to physically sign anything other than the motion itself. You're not going to sign any document, the necessary documents, until we've got something ready at the same time for the DCAM sliver, so that we get that sliver from the state. And we'll do that transaction at the same time parcels A and parcel B are going. They'll be separate pieces of paper, but they'll be brought all to you at the same time.
Okay.
But yeah, it's
But we were waiting for the state to vote to do it.
Yes.
That was the big
Yeah.
wrench in the problem here. So all we're looking for is a vote to do it. I mean, we could even sign the deeds, we just don't give them anything until we make the
well,
transfer.
you're gonna have a motion in the minutes that I can then give to DCAM showing that you all approve it.
Intend to do it, yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous?
Okay.
Let's get it
next order
done.
of business. Chief, you're on.
Oh, I'm back here again. This time is.
Chief, do you want to just move the
Oh,
mic
sorry.
towards you? So-
is to respectfully request that the board take a vote on offering Michael Bonkarooski a conditional offer of employment and also notification of employment. He's last month, you guys offered him offer of employment as a PI, reserve intermittent, and we called for civil service for a full-time list. Going off by the list that we had gotten before, Michael was the only applicant. We've conducted a full background check on him. Nothing's really changed since the last time we met. So I would, respectfully request a vote from the board to go ahead and get him ready to go for the March 1st Academy in Plymouth. He would fill out our position that Officer Lazinski left to go to Weymouth on a lateral transfer.
I'm sorry, are you saying Bonakowski or Linsky?
Bonkarooski, and then Lazinski's the one that left.
Anyone have any questions? We've spoken to the candidates several times, so I don't have anything else myself, but if anybody...
You still want to work here, right?
Are you sure?
What's that?
Are you sure?
Yes, 100%.
You told me the chief is a hard person to work for.
That's what I hear.
Do you see yourself staying, working for Halifax for a few years?
Yeah, I do.
Good.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
I'll be happy to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Pam is
Again.
Pam is sending you down the paperwork. Is it everybody signing, Pam, or just this Tom is the only one?
Yeah.
How long does the academy last now?
26 weeks. He's got to go January 28th for a physical, state changed this thing back in 19 where they require you to do the PAT test. And then to enter the academy, they do what they call the Cooper standards.
Standards.
Back in the old days. So they have to, it's, push-ups, sit-ups,
Carry it.
and
dummy
then
up the road.
mile and a half run. And they have to meet a criteria depending on their age, the 30th percentile. And then once they graduate the academy, they got to show an improvement to the 40th percentile. So he'll be there doing it on the 28th. If he fails, which he better not, they give him 2 weeks to retest. And then if he fails the retest, then he can't enter the academy. And since we have no other applicant, then it would just be a vacancy until the next civil service exam. But, I mean, Mike's in good shape, the 30th percentile. It's nothing that, for his age, I think, it's like 30 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, a mile and a half in like 15, 18 minutes, so, and then a sprint, so I think you'll be fine.
The part I like best when they gave you a dummy to weigh 150 pounds, and had to take him up a ladder.
Well, yeah, they do that for the PAT prior to this. This is a new thing that they've added, because I guess they've kind of done some studies, and they've shown that a lot of the guys show up to the academy, and they're actually not in good shape. And so they're using those 26 weeks to get in shape, and a lot of them fall out, and then a lot of injuries, so they're hoping that this kind of takes that care of that.
Come more in shape before you start the program?
Be ready to go, yeah.
Are they still using the swimming as a criteria, the final?
No more swimming.
Because when I went up, you had to swim 4 laps.
You get to swim in the
Tell
academy.
you how you did it, just swim 4 laps.
Yeah.
We're good. Thank you. Welcome forward again.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We expect great things out of you.
Hopefully keep going.
I'm going to bounce back up. I skipped the marijuana. We've been getting inquiries about the issue of the exclusion zone around the pouring licenses under our bylaw, whether it's in the commercial or the industrial zone. If you can't have a marijuana establishment within 500 feet, and that's property line to property line, not building to building. But from property line to property line, you can't have a marijuana establishment within 500 feet of a restaurant or similar establishment that has an alcohol pouring license. Especially now that the town has approved the commercial zone, by a special permit, we're getting inquiries, well, wait a minute, I can't do it over here because this restaurant is here or the other establishment is here. I don't know if there's any interest by the board in considering placing an article at the town meeting to eliminate the exclusion, or whether you would rather that be handled by the planning board, or that matter, if there are 10 registered voters, whether it's a person who's a vendor who's interested in doing business here in town and they gather it, or somebody else gathers it, but get the 10 registered voters and do it by petition article. But I thought I should bring it up since we're getting the inquiries, and I want to be able to say to people, well, if you want to do this, get the 10 signatures, or you want to do this, I suggest meeting with the planning board. The selectmen are not going to take a specific action or view on this. That doesn't mean they're against it. They just think that if it's going to come up, that somebody else should propose it.
For me, I'm not sure if we have our zoning bylaw review committee active or not. That would be a good topic for them to take up. I would be more inclined personally to ask the planning board if they wanted to take a look at this. And or, of course, to your point, Charlie, if the applicants wanted to get 10 signatures, I have no problem with it. I'm not opposed to this. I think it makes no sense the way it is now. I don't think I necessarily want to be championing it, but I don't know how the rest of the fellows feel.
I, for one, am not interested in changing it. When we did it in good faith. It wasn't because we're trying to weed people out. Either they meet the standards or they don't meet the standards. We're going forward. If we started revising these laws to accommodate everybody that comes in, we're going to have a hodgepodge.
I would request that if they want to make a petition article, to do the petition article.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that would be the best way to do it. Then it goes to town meeting, and then town meeting can just, town meeting can decide.
Well, and they can be the champion of the article
Right.
and say what the value is to the town.
Right, exactly. And that was my point. I don't want to champion it.
Then I got an answer, thank you. Country Club Estates, Chapter 40B, just an update. The hearing was held, the last session of the hearing was held last Wednesday. They're going to continue to the 24th of February. Out of all the discussion that happened then, I'd say the most significant item was the discrepancies of the wetland lines shown for the project versus the wetland lines shown for the nearby projects, such as Riley's. Plus, there were questions concerning the drainage easements and detention and retention areas for drainage, and whether the developer would have sufficient ownership or property rights or control that would pass muster under Chapter 40B. No decisions have been made or anything like that. All this is coming back on the 24th, but that's a brief synopsis of much of the discussion from last week.
Tom? Yeah, good. I guess, could you just explain where we are in the process, Charlie?
So the clock's ticking, certainly, but I believe it's May or June at this point that they haven't, the planning board has to have, the hearing has to be concluded within 180 days of the start, which, but that's been extended by another 30 days because they didn't have a hearing in December. The applicant agreed to extend it. After that, I think it's either 30 or 40 days after that that the ZBA needs to make a decision. So we're still several months away, both from the hearing having to be concluded and then an actual decision by the ZBA.
So if the ZBA says no, I'm assuming that would be appealable to the State Housing Authority?
Yeah, there's a board that handles Chapter 40B. I don't know if it's that, but yeah, there's an equivalent board that handles appeals of rejected permits or permits that have been approved, but there are conditions that the developer doesn't like on them.
Okay. So this is still a 6-month
Yeah, something on that order.
Potentially, yeah.
GATRA, I'll talk to you all on Tuesday about Silver Lake Regional School Committee vacancy. I know it's on the agenda for next Tuesday, and I know that Paul and Hatch and Gordon will talk to you all about, but just so the board's aware of it. Ed
Dejanay.
did resign from the Silver Lake School Committee, so we have a vacancy. Similarly to the elementary school, will be a combined vote of the school committee members from Halifax, not Halifax Elementary, but Gordon and Paula, and then the rest of the board. You want to consider how long you want to keep things open for resumes or town bank forms to come in. You want Pam and myself to contact the folks who had applied previously for the elementary school, things like that. But we'll talk about that on Tuesday. Red Cross blood drives. Red Cross will put up more signage and sandwich boards in Town Hall directing donors to the west wing, meaning this section of the building, and up to the Plymouth Street stairs, so that they won't wander around Town Hall and ask employees for directions. I know employees were concerned. They wanted fewer interactions with the donors. Not that we have a lot of people working here on Fridays, but if we can shun everybody in this direction rather than towards the other end of the building where they don't know where they're going, and then they start trying to knock on doors and find somebody who can tell them how to get to the Great Hall.
I think that's a much better way to do it.
So if it's okay with the board, they'd come back with a list of possible dates. The only one that we may have to move is, I think, the December one into late November before we start setting up the hall. Please, for holidays in Halifax, if that would meet with the board's approval. Okay. Records retention and permitting, we're bumping that to Tuesday. I am getting information from Caesar, I know, on those projects. Water Department, they have 2 copies of a contract to sign with Tata and Howard. This is for a, what do they call it? It's engineering services for the proposed changes to the oxidizing agents at Richmond Park Treatment Plant. What they're running into a problem is that no matter what they've done about treating the effluent, they cannot get the chlorine levels low enough that EPA will allow them to put that out into the groundwater. So now having to look at other possibilities for oxidizing agents. This money was originally appropriated at town meeting back in September. There's 2 copies, and there are blanks for all 3 of you if you want to approve it.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And on free cash, we came in certified $1,548,977. The water enterprise has a little bit over 1.2 million. Solid waste, of course, we've been dipping into it. It's down now to 155,000. And then they're still, the solid waste committee is still trying to get a meeting together. And then the cable chapter is 25,000, but that's simply a pass-through account. It just happened on June 30th. The money was sitting there, and it then moved over to Area 58. And then we had gotten a call here at the Selectmen's office last week about earth removal going over at the old furniture store by the railroad tracks on Route 36. That parcel now is owned by Liddell Brothers.
Oh.
They're using it, I believe, as a parking area more or less for equipment and such. They said they're moving about 500 to 600 cubic yards. A permit's required at 1,000, so they wouldn't meet that standard. If the board, for some reason, needed more information, they're happy to have someone provide it or meet with the board or whatever, but a permit's not needed for that amount. And that's all I've got.
Good. Anything from anyone else? No?
Does it, on the stuff with Caesar for their building permits and
Oh, yeah, the
data.
permitting, yeah.
So is he looking to provide us just with retention information or the whole
I think it's
process on
both.
Tuesday?
I'll confirm with him, but I think it's both projects.
Okay.
So it's just 2 to sign?
That's just two.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.